Okay, so, wow, you guys have really outdone yourselves this time. You've given us a ton to dig into,
Yeah, no kidding. It's going to be a fascinating deep dive.
for sure. We've got the situation in Ukraine, of course, always evolving, lots to unpack there. But then, on top of that, we've got well, frankly, pretty wild security situation here in the U.S. to break down.
Right, and we can't ignore the bigger picture either, right? China's role, what's happening in Israel and Gaza, even how the US and the UK are getting along, it's all connected.
Absolutely. It's like trying to untangle a giant knot, but that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
To try and make sense of it all for you. So let's jump right in.
Sounds good to me. Where should we start?
Well, I think Ukraine has to be our first stop. Lots of action on the ground, especially in the east.
Yeah.
The sources you sent, they confirm Russian advances south of Verkhnokamiansky.
Right around March 23rd, 24th, yeah.
Yep. And this is east of Siversk, as you know. But
Yeah.
here's what's interesting. It seems like they're really putting pressure on Siversk from three different directions, northeast, east, and southeast. Almost like they're trying to box them in, or at least keep the Ukrainian forces there pinned down.
That's interesting. It almost makes you think, are the Russians changing their tactics?
How so?
Well, instead of just trying to gobble up territory, maybe they're trying to create these intense pressure points, grind down the Ukrainians, make it harder for them to send reinforcements elsewhere.
That's a good point. And it wasn't just around Siversk either. There were also confirmed advances in the eastern part of Vilnipol, west of Velika Novosilka, around the same time.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And Velika Novosilka itself, well, that seems to be a real hotspot. The reports mention Russian offensive operations in multiple directions, north, within Vilnipol itself, even trying to push southwest toward Novopil.
So yeah, a lot of action, that's for sure. Velika Novosilka, that's a place they've been fighting over for a while now. If they're really ramping things up there, that could be significant.
Definitely. But hold on, because it wasn't all one-sided. We've got confirmed reports of Ukrainian forces actually pushing into Russian territory, specifically Belgorod Oblast.
Wait, really? Inside Russia?
Yep. Around March 24th, they advanced into the center of Demidovka, which is in the northwest of Belgorod. Now, I know they've been hitting targets across the border, but this seems different, like actually boots on the ground.
Wow, that's bold. You have to wonder what the Russians make of that. Even if it's a small-scale thing, that's got to have a psychological impact, right?
For sure. And it gets even more interesting. There's this report about a pretty significant operation by Ukrainian special forces. They were working with their intelligence, the GUR, some artillery units, and even HIMARS.
HIMARS. Seriously, that's a big deal.
Yeah, apparently they managed to take out 4 Russian helicopters, 2 Ki-52 attack helicopters, and 2 Mi-8 transports, all within the Belgorod region. And get this, they were stationed at this hidden jump point the Russians were using to launch surprise attacks.
That's a pretty sophisticated operation. Finding that jump point, coordinating the attack, that says something about how good their intel is and their ability to actually pull it off.
Right. It's not just about having the weapons, it's knowing how to use them effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's switch gears for a moment. Let's talk about the air war, because there was a really devastating missile attack on Sumy just yesterday.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was awful. 88 people injured, schools hit, buildings damaged, even a 5-story building.
A densely populated area. And what makes it even worse, this attack happened right while Russian and U.S. officials were meeting in Saudi Arabia trying to talk about a ceasefire. Talk about bad timing.
Yeah, that's rough. How can you even make progress with that kind of thing happening at the same time?
President Zelensky didn't hold back either. He straight up condemned the attack, said Russia was responsible, and called for real action, not just talk, if they're serious about peace.
And his deputy foreign minister, what did he say?
Yeah, he pretty much said the same thing. Pointed out the hypocrisy of talking about peace while bombing cities. Said they need to stop attacking civilians if they want anyone to take them seriously.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that, right? It makes it really hard to trust anything they say.
Totally. And, Sumy is only about 30 kilometers from the Russian border. They're basically living under constant threat.
No kidding. That's got to be incredibly stressful.
And then, on top of that, there was another massive wave of attacks overnight into Tuesday. Like a huge number of drones and missiles. 139 drones, they said, and an Iskander-M ballistic missile.
Whoa, that's intense. Iskander-M, those things are no joke.
Right. And while Ukraine says they shot down a bunch of drones, there's still a lot we don't know. They say 34 didn't hit their targets, but what about the rest? And the missile?
Yeah, that's worrying. It means their air defenses are stretched really thin, and that Russia is still willing to just hammer them from the air.
There was also some damage reported in Kharkiv from Governor Sinyhubov. A big fire at a company in Izium, some railway lines hit, a couple of civilian buildings. Thankfully, only 2 injuries, no deaths, but still.
The infrastructure damage, that's a big deal too, right? Even if it's not operational right now, rebuilding all that is going to be a huge task.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the military side. But now let's talk about the diplomatic front, because things are getting kind of strange, especially when it comes to the Black Sea. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he said that Moscow might be open to a new agreement about keeping the Black Sea safe for shipping.
Interesting. Like a new version of that grain deal they pulled out of.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. But here's the catch. Lavrov says they need a direct order from Washington for Zelensky to comply. Apparently, they don't trust Kyiv to keep its word. They want the U.S. to make Zelensky agree.
So they're basically saying the U.S. calls the shots.
Pretty much. Lavrov also said that only pressure from Washington can stop the attacks on Russian infrastructure. They want guarantees, and they only trust the U.S. to give them. It's definitely a new approach from them.
It's like they're trying to cut Ukraine out of the equation, but it also sounds like they're really keen on this grain deal thing. Maybe they're feeling the economic pinch.
Maybe? He kept talking about a predictable grain and fertilizer market. Sounds like they want to be back in business.
Makes sense. But then, hold on. Didn't something just break about an actual agreement?
Right. So as we were looking at all this, news came out that Kyiv and Moscow actually reached an agreement, with the White House apparently helping out. Safe navigation, no use of force, no using commercial ships for military stuff. And get this, they're saying it includes measures to prohibit attacks against energy installations.
Whoa, hold on. If this is true, that's a huge deal, especially that part about energy infrastructure. Things have been getting really nasty on that front.
Yeah, it's a big if. But here's the thing. Ukraine also released a statement, and they basically said any Russian military ship moving outside the eastern part of the Black Sea is a threat. They're still super suspicious.
Well, yeah, can you blame them? After everything that's happened, it's going to take more than a piece of paper to build trust.
Exactly. This whole thing is like walking on eggshells. Oh, and one more thing. That Russian negotiator, Grigory Karasin, he described the talks in Saudi Arabia as very interesting, difficult, but quite constructive. So at least they're still talking.
Interesting. So even with the fighting going on, there's still some back and forth, some hope of making progress.
Maybe. Okay, let's take a break from Ukraine for a bit and talk about this crazy security breach here in the U.S. Apparently, there was this Signal group chat where some very high-ranking officials were discussing military stuff, targets, timelines, you name it.
Signal? Like the messaging app. Are you serious?
Yep. And get this. A journalist accidentally got added to the group.
Wait, what? How does that even happen? We're talking about the CIA director, the director of national intelligence, the secretary of defense, and they're talking about military operations on Signal.
That's what the reports say. And the journalist has confirmed seeing messages about operations, specifically the attacks on the Houthis in Yemen. Weapons used, targets, timing. He's not saying exactly what he saw, obviously, for national security reasons, but still.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, loose lips sink ships, right? That kind of information getting out could be disastrous.
Right, and there's been a lot of criticism from Congress. Even Republicans are upset. Senator Warner said anyone doing that would be fired immediately.
Yeah, I can see why they'd be furious. That's basic operational security, and they're playing fast and loose with it. What's the White House saying?
They're downplaying it, of course, saying no classified information was shared. Come on, after what the journalist described, that's a tough sell.
Yeah, that doesn't pass the smell test. And what about Hillary Clinton? I saw she had something to say about this.
Oh, yeah, she posted on X, with that, "You have got to be kidding me" tone. A link to the article, too. Hard to miss the irony there.
Oh, yeah, big time. I mean, after all the heat she got for her emails, and now these guys are doing this, it's like they're begging for comparisons.
That's exactly it. The symbolic side of this is huge. We're talking about people like Hegseth, Rubio, Ratcliffe, Waltz, all appointed by the former president, and all super vocal against Clinton back in 2016.
Right, and they didn't hold back, did they? Saying she should be in jail, nobody's above the law, quoting the Espionage Act. It's all coming back to bite them now, isn't it?
It really is. It's like a giant "I told you so" moment.
Yeah.
You can't be out there demanding accountability and then do this.
It's bad all around. Makes the government look bad, undermines trust. And what about our allies? What are they thinking?
Well, that's the thing. It already seems to be affecting things. 10 Downing Street in the UK released a statement about some other leaked messages, this time from Vice President Vance and Defense Secretary Hegseth. Apparently, they weren't too kind about Europe.
What do you mean?
Well, Vance said something about hating having to rescue Europe again. And Hegseth chimed in saying, European leveraging is pathetic, and
Yeah.
that only the U.S. has real military power. Not exactly the kind of stuff you want your allies to hear.
Oh man, that's not good. I mean, I get it. There's always been that strain in the relationship, some Americans thinking Europe doesn't pull its weight. But to say it out loud like that, that's damaging.
Yeah, not very diplomatic, to say the least.
Hmm.
But the UK's response was pretty measured, all things considered. They talked about their partnership in the Middle East, how they've supported operations in Yemen, and that their intelligence sharing is still strong.
So they're trying to smooth things over. Makes sense, I guess. They don't want to start a fight, but they can't just ignore it either.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Okay, one last thing before we wrap up. The U.S. intelligence agencies just released their annual report, and, surprise, surprise, China is now their top concern. Military, cyber, technology, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that's been brewing for a while. China's been making some serious moves. What did the report say exactly?
Well, they basically laid out all of China's capabilities, weapons that can reach the U.S., cyber attacks, targeting space assets, and they also highlighted China's goal to become the world leader in AI by 2030.
AI, huh? Yeah, that's a big one. If they get ahead there, that's a game changer.
For sure. And the report also mentioned Russia, Iran, North Korea. Of course, those guys are always up to something. But get this, they said that Russia's been learning a lot from Ukraine, specifically about how to counter Western systems.
Oh, wow, that's not good. So they're basically using Ukraine as a testing ground, figuring out our weaknesses.
Yep, pretty much. It's a reminder that this war has implications far beyond Ukraine itself. Okay, and finally, let's touch on the Israel-Gaza situation. Things are still really bad there, obviously.
Yeah, that's been tough to watch. What's the latest?
Well, Israel intercepted a missile, a long-range one, coming all the way from Yemen. They think it was the Houthis, firing in support of Hamas. And this happened while the EU's foreign policy chief was actually in the region trying to mediate.
Man, that's just... It never ends, does it? And with the Houthis involved, that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Totally. So the EU official, Kaja Kallas, she met with both sides, Israeli and Palestinian. Same message as always. Release the hostages, restore humanitarian aid, get back to negotiations. But the Palestinian prime minister, he basically said the EU needs to take a tougher stance against Israel.
Yeah, that's been a constant frustration for them, haven't they? They feel like the international community isn't doing enough.
Right. And the casualty numbers from Gaza are just heartbreaking. Over 50,000 Palestinians dead since this started. That's 2% of their entire population.
That's just devastating. So much suffering. You have to wonder when or even if things will ever change there.
Yeah, it's a really bleak situation. Okay, so that's a lot to digest, I know. But let's try and bring it all together. What are the big takeaways here? We've got the war in Ukraine, obviously, but with these hints of a possible deal in the Black Sea. We've got the security mess in the U.S., which is making everyone look bad. And then we've got these global power struggles with China rising, Russia causing trouble, and the Middle East still a powder keg.
Yeah, it's a lot. What strikes me is how you've got these escalations and de-escalations happening at the same time. It's like the world is trying to figure out which way to go.
Right. It's confusing for sure. Makes you wonder what's really driving all of this. Are these isolated events, or is there something bigger going on beneath the surface?
That's the question, isn't it? And I don't think anyone has the answer. But one thing's for sure, it's a complicated world out there, and it's only getting more complicated.
Absolutely. So that's something for you all to ponder. As always, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon to try and make sense of whatever chaos the world throws at us next.